today's video I wanted to talk about all the different rumors and the new details that are coming out about Call of Duty 2020. There's leaked modes, features, and all kinds of different things related to a brand new game that should be coming later this year, probably the normal launch time of October, November. One thing we got this morning was Xclusive Ace came out with a video kind of detailing some of the different intel that he got from someone who works at the studio, and they shared some details that they're probably not supposed to share, but that gave us tons of information that he was able to put on his channel before he privated the video. A lot of times the devs can put out the information to see how the general feedback is of the different details, and maybe they're going to go through and read the comments. So I would highly recommend commenting the things you really like and the things you really hate, so that we get a good idea of what people are looking for in a next generation Call of Duty, especially since it's going to be set in the Cold War era. So if you enjoy what you hear or learn something new, please do me a favor hitting that like button. Goal on today's video is 1,000 likes, and if you're brand new, want to find your way back for more Call of Duty stuff, make sure you are subscribed with notifications on. So like they've already talked about for a while, it's supposed to be set in the Cold War era, which actually is supposed to take place between 1947 all the way up to 1991 based off historical data. So that is a huge time period that they can work with, and I think as a result of having such a large time period, they can actually have a variety of weapons and it would still make sense as long as they were able to space them out through the campaign. As far as the game, it looks like it's very far along and multiplayer is almost done, so that's always good to hear. Usually around this time they already kind of have an alpha. They've already, started inviting people out maybe for July to go ahead and try the game out. And then there's a beta usually in August, maybe September, and then the full game launches that following month or month and a half. And that's usually the game's life cycle. It's just been a little bit put off, it looks like, because of the virus that's going around. So I think that's throwing off the timetables, because a lot of the devs are got to work from home. So it's kind of how it goes. But as far as development, it looks like it's on pace to finish the way it's supposed to, and every COD has before it. So in addition to this, it also looks like Warzone's going to get an overhaul, and I know a lot of people are going to be excited about that. And there's also supposed to be some water features. So I'm not sure exactly how that's going to work, but that'll introduce a swimming dynamic. So some of the maps will also have swimming, similar to what we saw on like Black Ops 3 and other Call of Duties, Black Ops 4, where you're able to go underwater and you're able to swim around and still kind of use your weapon. So we'll be seeing those mechanics come back into the game, whereas in this Call of Duty, you step into water, you're pretty much dead. So it looks like the unlimited sprint is back, but they've gone and removed the tactical sprint, and I think this ends up leading to a little bit more consistency. I think what ends up happening in the game currently is, because of the tactical sprint, it gives you that extra mobility, but then you have a tactical sprint out time, which is significantly slower than your regular sprint out time, which is significantly slower than your walking aim down sight time. So overall, you're getting more penalized the faster you move, which ends up rewarding people who camp or encouraging a campy playstyle, because if you happen to run, you're not going to be able to react quick enough to win those gunfights. So I think that's a good thing. They're kind of going back to a way we've had it in other Call of Duties. I think the tactical sprint works kind of in competitive, just kind of speed up the pace. You're dealing with 5-on-5, but I think overall, as kind of an overall public type of thing, I don't really think it's the best idea to have a tactical sprint. But unlimited sprint, I am a fan of, because it does still allow you to move around. You don't feel sluggish. You don't get winded after 10 steps with an operator. So it also looks like there are no regular doors in multiplayer, but obviously, since they've already had doors in Warzone, they're going to kind of carry that portion over. So some of the stuff is going to be reused currently from Modern Warfare. It looks like it's going to Warzone. So this is good in my opinion. I think in multiplayer, it kind of slowed down some of the pace. It led to some inconsistencies in gunfights, because you could break through a door, start firing at someone, and on their end, you wouldn't even have the door broken open yet, which creates a little bit of issues as far as lag comp, cameraing, and some more advanced movement techniques. And if you're above average player, you probably ran into people using all those various mechanics, whether it's cameraing, the bunny hop, or a slide cancel. I'm sure you've seen it at some point if you're an above average player, because of skill-based matchmaking. Looks like 10 multiplayer maps are already pretty much developed. There's some minor tweaks here and there. That seems kind of like what the current Call of Duties have been doing recently. They kind of limited the maps. Obviously with Modern Warfare, they came out with the 6v6, the 10v10, ground war. So there was a little bit of variety there. In this particular case, it's looking like the maps are going to be kind of what we're used to, traditional style. So we're not going to have any huge maps like we've seen with Ground War that were basically parts of the Warzone map. Obviously, that can come later on, but in the current development, it looks like the 10 maps that we're getting are already pretty much developed, and it's similar to what we're used to. It also looks like they've gone the route of not having specialists, which personally I'm not a fan of specialists in Call of Duty, but it looks like we're having some form of build upgrades in addition to maybe a tactical piece of equipment kind of combined in one group. But it also sounded like the tactical upgrade is going to be included with that, so it's going to be continually bundled, and you'll be able to stack up to 2 at a time instead of just holding on to 1 and it stays there until you use it. You'll be able to stack up to 2, so it'll kind of have a passive build up while you still have 1 in your inventory. Scorestreaks, it look like they're going to be returning, so they're going back to kind of what we've had in Call of Duty for quite a bit. Obviously, World War II experimented with that Blitzkrieg perk, which allowed you to turn the Scorestreaks into kill streaks. In this Call of Duty Modern Warfare, they've kind of gone the opposite, where you start off with kill streaks and you have to run point man to convert your streaks to score streaks, but it's going to be that way by default. So it's just one of those perks that, you know, won't exist in this game. Maybe they'll have a perk that converts it to kill streaks the same way World War II did. We'll kind of have to wait and see on that. We went through the various score streaks, pretty much the same ones that we're accustomed to do. The counter UAV, the UAV, artillery strike, like pretty much the same 7 or 8 streaks that are in almost every Call of Duty, maybe just renamed. Those are the same streaks we're getting. He also mentioned that it didn't look like we were going to get an advanced UAV this time around, which in my opinion is kind of unfortunate because it is one of the few hard counters that you have to Ghost players. So we'll kind of see how the Ghost perk plays out. He doesn't have details on that yet, but overall I would prefer a Ghost perk that made it so you had to at least be moving the same way it was in Black Ops 4. I think there's always got to be a balance between movement and footsteps, so as long as the footsteps are balanced appropriately, then it kind of works to make sure that you're moving while you have ghosts. It kind of balances itself out, especially since there's no dead silence in the current build of the game, which ends up being a huge issue, and I don't know why they would not have dead silence, because we went from BO4, which had a pretty decent dead silence. It wasn't perfect, but it was pretty good, and then we went over to Modern Warfare where we kind of got one every so often. Depending on how many kills you got, it would cycle pretty quick. If you had tune-up on, it would make it even faster, but for the most part we kind of had a dead silence that wasn't all that great. The only thing that was kind of cool about it was that as long as you were getting kills, it would continue going forward, but the fact they're going to completely remove it after all the backlash the game got at the launch for Modern Warfare, I'd be very surprised if we don't see a version of dead silence in the final build of this game, just because of all the backlash that came out. So the other part that gets a little bit tricky for some people is they're going to have 150 health similar to Black Ops 4, but instead of having the manual heal with the stim shot like we had, it's supposed to keep what we currently have, which is the auto healing. So basically after a certain amount of time, whether it's 5 seconds, then you start healing, and then there's a certain time period where the healing takes place. So that's pretty much how that'll work. I'm not sure if we're gonna have health bars again. I would imagine we have health bars just because it makes it a little bit more visible. I don't know if the enemies will have health bars, because I thought that was pretty helpful to just lead to consistency in gunfights. When you knew exactly how much health someone had, you could see your health bar, you could see everything line up. I just felt it was a simpler system, not necessarily better, but it was a simpler system. And as long as they balance the weapons right, I think it could work with it, not everyone feeling spongy, and it allows it for better weapon balance. I personally felt that in Black Ops 4 we had way more weapon variety than we currently have within Modern Warfare, even though Modern Warfare has like 10 to 15 more weapons than Black Ops 4 had. So just something to keep in mind. I think that leads to better weapon balance, more diversity. You can use about 10 different rifles, SMGs, versus now the meta is really like 3 or 4 weapons, which I'm not a fan of. It kind of gets boring. Then one of the other things that a lot of times people get kind of debates on is the creative class system. It looks like a unique hybrid between the Pick 10 and a classic creative class system without a gunsmith. So I would imagine what that means when they say hybrid, it's going to be an expanded version of the original BO1 creative class. And if you guys aren't familiar with that one, because maybe you never played it, pretty much you get your primary 1 attachment, secondary 1 attachment, you get one perk 1 perk 2, 1 perk 3, and then you get your tactical and your lethal, and that's pretty much basic. I think why it's a hybrid is because they're going to add on to that, where you already have all those slots accounted for, and then you have a certain number of spots available to maybe run a wild card, so you can run additional attachments, run additional perks, or maybe you have a couple points where maybe you could just directly equip them 4 attachments. Whether you want an optic and a suppressor, you're going to get a little bit of variety. Maybe you don't want to equip anything on your secondary because maybe you're going to run a launcher or a pistol, and maybe you just don't want to waste the attachments there. You can always apply them to the weapon. So it looks like maybe it could be like a hybrid where you end up with where the weapons and the perks won't initially take that first slot. So you still end up having like 8 to 10 points left over, which you can use however you want, whether you want to stack up on a couple perks or extra attachments. So that's at least kind of my thought process when they're saying it's going to be a hybrid class setup. Within the video, he said that there's no gunsmith, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad thing because they can kind of modify the system enough where there's still a variety of attachments, like 60 to 80 attachments per weapon, and you still end up with the feeling that you get when you use the gunsmith, where it visibly changes the weapon significantly for pretty much all the different attachments. I think that's still a very possible thing, but it wouldn't obviously work the way it does now, where you're guaranteed 5 attachments for your primary and 5 attachments for your secondary. Also, one other hot topic was a lot of issues when Modern Warfare first dropped was the standard mini-map is going to be coming back. And there'll also be a compass, I guess, if people got used to that, but the standard mini-map, meaning that if you fire your weapon while it's unsuppressed, a red dot will appear. And then on top of that, they also removed the fog of war, which I think is a huge change. It kind of adds a lot of benefit. Yeah, and pretty much the fog of war was kind of a broken system. If anyone was kind of in a close proximity to you, it would automatically highlight them on the mini-map. In addition to that, if one of your teammates saw an enemy, it would automatically mark them, which I'm kind of a fan of, but obviously there should be some kind of communication for that, not literally highlighting them exactly where the person's standing. So I'm a fan of going back to more of the traditional stuff, and overall I think they're combining different elements from different Call of Duties, most notably probably like Black Ops 1, Black Ops 4, and then obviously Modern Warfare. And overall, I think we're going to end up with a pretty solid game. We'll kind of have to wait till all the trailer drops and the gameplay comes out. We get opportunity to try out the beta, and a lot of these things are subject to change. So, I mean, if your feedback is positive about certain things, I'm sure they're going to keep those things. And if they're a little bit more negative about certain aspects, I'm sure those things will also be changed up a little bit to try and give the users the best experience possible. At the end of the day, I think one of the biggest deciding factors, and one I didn't even talk about, and one we will never hear about most likely until the game actually drops, which is skill-based matchmaking. I think skill-based matchmaking has the ability to make or break a Call of Duty, and I think that's one of the few things that is very polarizing in the community. If you're a lower skilled player, you love skill-based matchmaking. If you're an absolute sweat and you're great at the game, obviously you don't enjoy it quite as much, just because you feel like you're playing with money on the line every single match when somebody else can play casual. It just doesn't make for a fair gaming experience. So hopefully you guys did enjoy the video. If you did, please let me know by hitting that like button. If you're brand new, want to find your way back for more Call of Duty content, make sure you are subscribed with notifications on. Appreciate all the support. Thank you for watching. As always, have a great day.